Hey everybody, Seth here with the Visual Arts Academy in the studio. Joining me today is our instructor, Chad Nuss. I apologize for the delay. We were trying to get going live a little bit earlier, but we wanted to make sure we had everything set up for you guys. And boy, are we incredibly excited. This is our first time where Chad and I are going to try to do this together. So we're going to try to have kind of an artist conversation, showcase his drawing as well as my painting at the same time, answering any questions you guys might have, sharing some tips and tricks, and hopefully just having a good time. Chad, are you pretty excited?
Oh, I can't wait. We've talked about this for several days now, so I'm glad we're finally doing it. So
Me too. So guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for jumping on. Again, the goal is to have an interaction with you. So we've got our comments pulled up. We're still working on through some of the individual elements of the different posting sites. But please ask questions. We're going to kind of talk through this, maybe, and share some conversations that he and I have had about some of what I'm working on and what he's working on. But really, this is for you. So write us. Let us know you're here. Let us know you're enjoying it. We're going to kind of work through. Chad, I'm going to throw it over to you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're working on?
Yeah, so this is what I kind of term an apocalyptic landscape. So it's about 6.5 feet wide, about 3.5 feet tall. I started with graphite, but I'm going to turn it over to some charcoal just for these darker areas. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later as far as that choice. And I've talked about it in the past live sessions. But yeah, so that's the big picture goal here. I think for right now, I'm going to start working on this kind of lower area below this mountaintop and just start putting in some flat tones, and then I'll go back in and put in some more textures and details after that. So,
and Chad, I know a couple of questions you've gotten, and it's a unique thing, I think, for me as an artist, is how you're working with your reference, because you have some reference, but you don't really rely on it. You just kind of use it as a concept, right?
Yeah, so I do look up some, I'll like Google mountaintop or I'll Google clouds or something like that to get some images. But really, I don't have like a photograph that I'm working off of. I just look to see like, what does a mountain look like? What do clouds look like? What do, the side of a cliff, what does that look like? And I just try to reproduce it because the one thing I know is that, if you sit there and look at a mountain closely, you can kind of see different patterns that happen. And so I just try to reproduce that pattern when I'm drawing a mountain or drawing a cloud or whatever. There's not really like an exact way to draw those things. And especially because the whole piece is kind of a imaginary or a fantastical scene. My goal is to make it look real, but not hyper realistic. I'm not trying to reproduce a photograph. So yeah, I use reference very loosely.
And I think that's something, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, but I think that's something that's really interesting because I get that asked a lot about when I use references, right? And I try to remind people that I want to be better than my reference. The photo already exists. The photo is a piece of art itself, right? Especially good photography, purposeful photography. And so, when I use a photo as a reference, Chad, it's usually a guide, and I want to still keep it as my own creative energy, right? Keep it as my own being and my own creation. And so I think that's interesting. I wonder if there's other artists that feel that same way, or if their whole goal is to be as photorealistic as possible, which, by the way, anybody that's listening or watching is an amazing skill. I mean, the ability of some of these people to do what they do is absolutely mind-boggling.
Yeah. So, and I pointed this out before, but I'll bend forward. You can see there's a portrait that I did there in the background. Now for that, I did use a photo reference. I had my wife literally sit in a chair in our living room in a particular position, and I took a photograph, and I worked very closely from that photograph. Whereas with this is a composite of a lot of different images, and it's not an actual scene. It's a scene that I made out of my head. So I'm using it a lot more in a more loose manner. So with the portrait that I did, I was thinking specifically of the artist John Singer Sargent, who did a lot of those types of painterly portraits, very large oil paintings. But I wanted to do one in graphite in that same style. So I had her sit a certain way that was very reminiscent of the portraits that he painted, and then use that photograph as a reference. Whereas with this, I am influenced by some very famous artists, one in particular named John Martin, who did these very large, expansive landscapes, and they were typically very like apocalyptic, end of the world type stuff. But I'm not reproducing his painting, and I'm not reproducing a photograph. I'm using him as inspiration. I'll look at his paintings to kind of see how he worked with some of the lighting, and then I'll look at my photo reference. But then beyond that, as you can see, I don't have any photographs around me right now. I'm just kind of working it. If I get to a spot where I feel like it doesn't look like the side of a cliff or a cloud or whatever, I'll get my photo reference of a cloud, and I'll just see what can I adjust to make it look more real or more accurate to what a cloud or a mountain top looks like.
Well, and Chad, I guess, a question for me, because, you and I both do comics as well. We produce fine arts, fine art drawings, fine art paintings, and things of that nature. But we also, I do a cartoon as a comic strip, and you do graphic novels. How do you utilize reference when you're using it in regards to your graphic novels? Do you use it differently? Are you using it more specifically, or is it something that you just kind of continue on no matter what you're trying to produce?
Yeah, with the comic book art, I very rarely use a whole lot of reference with that. That's a lot straight out of my head, which takes years and years and years to get to that point, just because you have to be very familiar with the things that you're drawing. But like right now, I'm working on a graphic novel, and there's a particular scene of a medical unit. There's not really, there's some, like, you can get online, you can find some sci-fi pictures of like a hospital or a medical room or whatever. And I have looked at those, but I'm not trying to reproduce that because that's someone else's art. So I'm just kind of seeing, the way that they've used it, and then kind of take some of those elements, but not specifically. So I in the same with the comic book art, I use it very loosely. If there's a figure that I want to draw, or I'm looking for a particular position, I'll look at like sports figures, I'll look at ballet figures, I'll look at, just general reference pictures to get maybe the body position or the anatomy. But beyond that, that's all I'm using it for. I'm not trying to, reproduce those photographs.
Right. Absolutely. There's a couple of things that you mentioned there, but we really got a great question from Joe.
Yep.
Joe's question is, why is your canvas have a yellow tint versus Chad's is white? Different material. Well, yes, but there's also a different reason for that, Joe. First and foremost, Chad is working on paper. He's working graphite and charcoal on white paper. And what's really neat about that, and Chad, you can feel free to chime in on this, is Chad wants to use his white paper as a tone, right? He's using that as a tint. The lightest light is the paper itself. He can go back in and add some other white charcoal, white graphite on there, but he's using that as his base level tint, right? If that makes sense. For me, I don't want to work from white. I used a yellow ochre base wash on canvas, so I'm actually working on canvas. So that way I'm not working directly from blank white. I'm working from a neutral tone of yellow, but also the yellow wash that I have is being used to produce color underneath of my oils. Oils has a certain level of transparency, Joe, so that yellow is going to shine through. And then as I finish my grisaille, which thank you, Chad, for correcting me on my pronunciation of that. We've been working on our French, guys and gals. If you're listening, French is not a good language for me to work on, but this is what we've been developing. But even these brown tones, this raw umber and white, when I come in to add on my colors, that yellow ochre will still show through. And I wish I could get in close enough for you guys to see, but even on where you look like there's full paint coverage, it's not. There's still some of that yellow pulling through. So it's, yes, he's working on a different material. He's working on paper and I'm working on canvas, but it's the method of how we're working that is different as well.
Yeah, and as I get into these larger areas, I am going to go in with charcoal and just put a light tone over the paper. I probably, if I had to be honest with you, I probably should do that more often. I've had people ask me that question before, like if I'm using charcoal or graphite, like why don't you fill in the tones first and then go back in? That's probably maybe an area that I need to grow in a little bit. Everyone has a different method. But if you notice, even right now, what I'm doing is I'm just laying in some gray. I'm not really going into a whole lot of detail because I know from here down on this mountain is pretty dark. And so I don't want to go in with a flat black because I want there to be some variety of texture and tone. But at the same time, I want to layer it. So I'm going to go in with a flat kind of gray tone. Then I'm going to go back in darker tone, darker tone, darker tone as well. So yeah, I will incorporate some tones into this, so it won't be all just white as I'm working. So.
Well, and one of the things that I think, Chad and I, really focus on as instructors is, there's a lot of techniques that you can teach. There's a lot of techniques that you can learn. But ultimately, as you digest those different methods, different techniques, different skills, you end up creating your own, right? So everybody works a little bit differently. And I think that's a really powerful thing to keep in mind, is that as you develop as an artist, you may do something that's quote unquote not technically perfect, right? But you've worked through it over the years. You know how you want to work. Chad and I were just discussing, and maybe this is something we can talk about, Chad, is, I used to work and complete a drawing from like the top right corner all the way down to the bottom left-hand corner. And I would start there, I would finish it, make it perfect, and then move all the way down. And as I've gotten older, I try to bounce around the canvas more now. But it's interesting because I bounce around the canvas and finish certain spots when I'm painting, but when I'm drawing, I still finish from one section to the other, right? I don't generally kind of create areas of impact, but that doesn't mean it's wrong, right? Just because there's a certain way that you can do things and there's a way that you were taught or learned, that doesn't always mean that that's how you have to work. And I think as you develop skills, techniques, you find your own methodology of working. What do you think about that, Chad?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I referenced the portrait behind me, and that's how I worked. I started with her face, and then I moved to her shoulders and upper torso. Then I worked on the back of the chair, and then went right around to the chair to her legs. And I completed each section before moving on. And there, that's one way you could do it. Other people would maybe argue, as I said before, lay in all the tones, put a base layer down, then put in your darker tones, then kind of outline the figure. People have all different ways. Even in painting, like I don't paint a whole lot, but I know like some people will use a charcoal drawing first and they'll paint that charcoal drawing. Other people just start with the paint and just go in and just paint whatever they see. There's not like a singular way of doing it. It's funny, Seth and I talked about this a couple times before, but like, if one artist, it takes one step to get there and another artist, it takes them 20 steps and they both get to the same place, it doesn't really matter. I mean, at that point, it just becomes like kind of an ego thing. Like, well, you should do it this way because that's the way I do it, or that's the way the masters did it, or whatever. I think obviously there's wisdom to learning from the masters and how they did it, because they're much more talented and better than you are. But at the same time, there's freedom in art. You don't have to do it, the way other people have done it. So,
well, and I think to your point, the masters, we call them masters for a reason, but the whole world has changed. Techniques and skills have changed, right? The invention of collapsible paint tubes, different mediums. I remember, Chad, there was a long time where acrylic painting was not considered as high level as oil. And I feel like that's changed. A lot of people's perception of, acrylics, it used to be, well, they're not archival, or they don't have as strong a pigment, or, you can't layer the same way. And I think that's changed a lot. I know it's changed a lot in the art buying community, the collector community. A lot of people collect specifically acrylic work. And some of the works that I think, Chad, there's some that you can't differentiate whether it was oils or acrylics, period.
Yes.
So, the world has changed, but there is a reason why we call them masters.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with kind of the rise of a lot of abstract art has really opened up how versatile acrylics are. Whereas, for so many years, it was all about oils. Now, I'm not an expert in that, but as far as the history of that, but I feel like with abstract art really opened up a lot of possibilities with acrylic art, and now acrylic paint, and now you see it being used just like oil paints, just like you said. So yeah.
Yep.
So you asked me what I'm working on. What part of your painting are you on right now?
You got me. I got some work done today. So I did bounce around a little bit. I'll zoom out and we'll see if we can do this, guys. Again, this is a learning process for Chad and I both. So I'm going to see if we can mess around with a little bit of this and see what we've got. But I'm going to see if I can give you guys a bigger screen. There you go. So what I'm working on is a large 30 by 40 portrait of my second oldest daughter. And I've been working on the grisaille, which is the base layer. Well, not the technical base layer, but a mid layer And so you can see I started with the face, as Chad kind of mentioned that he did with his wife's portrait. And I've now gotten quite a bit of work done. I've layered in some of the texture for the carpet back there, the backside of the couch. And right now what I'm working on is finishing up the pant leg. It's been driving me crazy not having that completed, Chad. So I've kind of bounced around now to that. So I'm working on completing this pant leg, which if you've watched any of the previous videos on this, it is an absolute challenge because these pants are like weird jean material. They're not like regular blue jeans, but they're like weird blue jean from the 80s. So there's a big model of texture. But, you know, Chad, when you're talking about learning from the masters, it's funny how you can learn things. I was thinking about this today when I was working on the carpet, Chad. I used to hate stippling. I hated stippling, which is, for those listening, that's using dots, right? That's pointillism. It's stippling and pointillism kind of go hand in hand. There's a slight variation there. But I used to hate it. And it's funny, I haven't done stippling in probably 25 years. But I work on this section, you know, I'm over here working on this section of the carpet, and all of a sudden that learned skill just came flooding back to my mind. And I'm like, I literally thought, thank goodness that I was taught this, because now I'm using it, and it's very important for me to be able to gather this texture. So it's interesting how those things kind of come back to you in life.
Yeah, for sure. I actually enjoy stippling. Used it quite a bit with ink drawings because it gives such a nice gradation. So I'm sorry that you feel so badly about.
No, I actually had a good experience with stippling. I just I don't know. It was very slow moving. And you and I are, again, we're going back now for those listening. Chad's pace of work is very different than my pace of work. And I could see how he loves stippling, the methodology, the fluidity of it, the detail focus. I mean, if you guys look at his mountains, you can see that how tight he is, what we call tight in the art world. And even though it's still loose, it's a certain level of detail there. Whereas if you look at my pants, they're very painterly, right? Because I'm working faster, I'm moving very quickly. And I think it's funny that you like pointillism, because now I'm sitting there going, I can't work with it. It's crazy. But everything has its place. And I think that's why, you know, one of the things that we do at the Academy here is we share a lot of the skills and the techniques that we learn from mentors and instructors, or techniques that you and I have developed on our own, right? You know, over the years. But it's important to share those out because it becomes part of their base knowledge, right, Chad? And you don't know when learning how to hatch or cross hatch appropriately comes back, or how to build layers, or just all these different skills that we try to share here at the Academy. I think, and I believe truly, are helping people create their own unique styles and own unique talents. And it's just giving them more tools in their toolbox. I truly do believe that.
Yeah, we had some of the girls in my drawing 101 class had never used a blending stump before. And it was like opened up a whole new world to them because they'd been so used to either just shading with a pencil and like trying to, you know, get those gradations or whatever, or just maybe smudging it with their finger or whatever, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm actually doing that right now. But to have an actual tool really just opened up a whole world of possibility for them. And they were so excited to use it. And that's the value of not only just in-person training, but just artist to artist working together and learning from each other. You say, you know, I still watch online videos and tutorials and things that other artists are doing, you know, that I'm still trying to learn. Like, you know, just over the last couple of weeks, I watched a lot of videos of people drawing casts and like how they use their graphite. So like, with such subtlety, you know, in ways that I still need to work on. So it doesn't matter what level you're at, you're really still trying to learn and get as much as you can from other artists. So.
Absolutely.
Hey, here's a little technical detail for you. Can you hear me right now? Seth,
Yep. Can you hear us there?
when you went to that screen of me drawing, your mic cut out, so I couldn't hear anything you were saying.
I apologize. Well, then I need to tell you back because Joe's giving you some crap. So I need to make sure I tell you. Joe says, make sure you get a new blending tool.
Yeah.
Chad. Last week you said you needed a new one. You made some happy mistakes last week. Laugh out loud.
Well, I do have a different one that I'm using now. It's a little bit cleaner. So, yeah, he was right. But the point I was making last time when I was using that is sometimes, you're using a tool that is not super clean. It gives you some marks you don't want, but then that's an opportunity to change it up and use that to your advantage and put some different variation and details that you weren't intending before. So that's all part of being an artist, is taking advantage and opportunity of mistakes. So
absolutely. We got a great question from Susanna. What is Chad drawing with? Chad, what is it that you're working with there, bud?
Yeah, so the main part of the mountains up top here is graphite, and I love graphite. It works great. The problem that you run into with graphite is when you get into darker areas, you get a shine or a sheen over it, and that's really devastating. Especially if you're showing this and the light hits it in a certain way, the shine can be so bright that sometimes you can't even see the picture. So I tried to use they have these kind of pencils that are matte pencils. So I think, and I said this before, I need to do more research on it, but I think they add some charcoal into it, which takes away that glare. The problem with those pencils is they don't blend very well, and they leave kind of a grain. Like you can see the paper come through, which is fine for some techniques if that's what you're going for. But I really like kind of smooth transitions, smooth blending. So I decided to go to use charcoal for the darker areas because it gives a really nice flat matte color or tone. I'm sorry, and it's really versatile to use. Like it's really easy to blend. It gives some really nice transitions and very dark blacks, and that's what I want in large sections of this drawing. So right now I'm using a combination of your basic charcoal pencil and a charcoal vine. And I'm using the vine to give that kind of gray tone. And then I go in with the charcoal pencil because it has a bit of a different feel. The charcoal vine is very smooth. It moves around very easily. Whereas the charcoal pencil is a bit more like graphite. It sticks to the paper a bit more. It does blend, but the blend is a lot tighter. And so you're able to get a lot more detail with the pencil than you are with the vine. You can get detail with the vine, especially if you blend it a certain way and you get a sharp edge. But the charcoal that comes off of the vine is very loose, and so it's very easy to smudge and move around. Whereas with the charcoal pencil, once you start using that, it kind of is contained where it is. I don't know how else to explain it other than, let's say if I took a brush or a piece of tissue and I rubbed that area, whatever I use the vine charcoal would probably just vanish. It would leave a trace. So that's why I'm using it as a base layer. But then when you go in with this pencil, and if you use that same thing, you would still have that dark tone there. It just blends a bit different. It's almost like it's thicker. It's like if you drank wine, the vine charcoal is like a Pinot Grigio or like not even. No, it'd be lighter than that. It'd be like what's the Behringer? It's like a fruity pink wine.
Oh, Moscato.
Moscato, whereas the charcoal pencil is like a Cabernet. It's much thicker, has a lot more body. So that's the best way I think I would describe it. Or it's like the vine charcoal is like skim milk, and the charcoal pencil is like whole milk.
Or for us who have earned our beers, Chad, it's like a Coors Light versus a nice heavy IPA or
yes.
a Guinness.
Yes, exactly. This charcoal vine is like the Coors Light of so, and I like darker beer anyway, so that's why I like the pencil, I think. So.
That's a great question. We got another comment here that I just got to throw out there because this is something you and I are pretty adamant about. And Patricia says, I need a master class in how to fix mistakes.
Yes.
I need a master class in how to fix mistakes. And Chad, I'll jump on that one real quick first.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think there's a combination of things here, right? There's sometimes mistakes aren't really mistakes. And Bob Ross was famous for, happy things happening, right? Happy mistakes, happy things. And he made it so popular because there's some truth in that. We've already talked about it a little bit, right, Chad? Joe made a comment about you need a new blending tool and happy mistakes happen. So sometimes mistakes aren't really mistakes. They're opportunities to continue to work your piece, right? Sometimes that's the truth. The truth is things happen and you can grow with it. And a piece of artwork doesn't always, and usually doesn't, in my opinion, go 100% the way you think it should. You have to adapt. You have to change with it. But then there are some times where you do legitimately make mistakes. For instance, if Chad rips his paper right now, if he rips through that paper, that's a legitimate mistake. How's he going to fix that? How's he going to patch that or repair that? Or is the drawing done, right? Patricia, we see that a lot in watercolor. Chad, I talked about that a lot with watercolor. You can oversaturate the paper and tear and rip that paper. And at that point, that is a legitimate mistake. And sometimes you can't fix those. But that's okay that you can't fix those. Because a lot of times when you go back and do it the second time or the third time or the 100th time, you've learned something each time and you end up getting better. So when you say, I need to fix mistakes, sometimes they're not mistakes. Sometimes they are mistakes. Sometimes you can fix them. But sometimes it's just part of the process of being creative. And I think that's okay, Patricia. It's okay to sometimes have things that you can't fix. And I think the healthier, the easier you get work with, yes, overworking. Sometimes you can overwork. But as you get better with understanding that you're not always going to be able to fix things, I think there's growth that comes with that, Chad. I really do believe that sometimes things happen where you can move on or go back and produce it again. And a lot of times that's better the second or third or fifth time.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you said about some things aren't mistakes, because I think a lot of times you'll look at something, you didn't do it the way that you had hoped, and you thought, oh man, this is a mistake, I've ruined it. But the reality is you haven't ruined it. And part of your job as an artist is to be creative. And that also includes, how do I be creative with the things that maybe didn't go the way I had intended, right? And I think some of the hesitation too is that, with trying new things is, well, what if it doesn't work out the way I want it to work out? Well, it might not. And that's okay. It's exactly what Seth said. Sometimes you just have to start over. Sometimes that mistake that you would consider a mistake is actually your greatest blessing, because the next time you work on a piece, it's that much better because you've already messed it up. So that's fine. You just do it again. It's like in this part that I'm working right now, I'm not 100% where I want it to go and exactly what I'm doing down here. Will I make a mistake? Probably. Will, some things happen that I'm not happy with and it'll just be that way? Probably. But some other amazing things might happen as a result. So you have to get to a point where it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to mess something up. It's okay to mess something up in front of other people. You just remind yourself you're in process. Every piece that you work on is not going to be a masterpiece. Every piece you work on is not going to come out the way that you had hoped it. And that's fine. That's the point is not the end goal. The point is the process of just continuing to work and get better and work on those mistakes. And you'll see lesser mistakes, but you'll see different mistakes crop up as you go on. So you can't really get away from them. They're just always going to be there.
Well, and Patricia does bring up a good word, which is overworking. And there is such a thing as overworking, right? There is such a thing as not stepping away and giving it a break. Or in a lot of mediums, you can overwork oils, right? You can overwork graphite, right, Chad? I mean, there's times that you can absolutely overwork a piece. But let's look at those a little bit different, right? There's a difference between mistakes and overworking. Overworking is giving yourself a chance to breathe. Let the paint or the medium do what it's supposed to do. Let the piece develop, right? Be patient sometimes. Sometimes we can overwork because we're impatient. And so I think that, there is, to me at least, and Chad and other artists may feel differently, overworking and mistakes don't necessarily equate to the same thing, and they don't always go hand in hand. I think there's some different approaches that you can have with that. But overworking is something that we can get better at as artists over time. We can monitor that to see, am I overworking it? Am I not giving it a chance to breathe? So I'm glad you stated that, Patricia, because there is a little bit of a difference between mistakes and overworking, in my opinion. I'm going to shift my camera a little bit, Chad. I finished up the pant leg, and right now I feel like it's moving pretty good.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty good. And so I'm gonna shift and start working on some of this wood grain over here, keeping with the floor wood grain that I've got going on, and I'm gonna shift over to that. But thank you guys so much, everybody. Thank you for joining the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. Again, I'm Seth Jones, one of the instructors here. This is Chad Nuss, our master draftsman and instructor as well. We thought we'd have a little bit of fun and do one of these together and see what you guys think of it. We think we have good conversations. We have fun talking and chatting and having a good time creating. And honestly, he and I don't always get to work at the same time because we're working on different classes and doing different things. And so we're so glad that you guys have joined us. So glad that you guys have given us some comments and feedback. Again, if you have anything that you'd like to know, we can try to answer that as best we can. Or if you just want to let us know you're here, let us know you're here and watching. And we're going to keep working on things. But thank you guys so much for joining us here at the Visual Arts Academy and Studio Live. We really appreciate everything that you guys do for us, and we're happy that you're part of our community. So thanks for joining us. Chad, anything that I know that you've been talking a lot about this landscape and these mountains, but tell us a little bit where you're going to go with it. Where are you're working on this giant section right now, but this is only a piece of that work, right? I mean, this piece is what, almost 5-6 feet long.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about what this piece is going to end up like.
Yeah. So this portion that I'm working on right now, I talked a little bit about it last time. I have a couple different options a couple different ways I could go with it. My original thought was that underneath this mountain, it's just going to start disintegrating and breaking apart and kind of blowing up and that kind of thing. And I think that's the way I'm going to go with it. So down below the mountain, it's going to be kind of falling apart. At the very bottom, there's going to be like tsunami type waves and some water down there. So all these rocks are falling into that water, creating a lot of havoc. So when I get to that point, I'm going to have to lift this up a little bit higher because I'm not going to be able to, I'm sitting on a stool right here. I'm not going to be able to reach the bottom. But when I get down there, so the left bottom corner will be an ocean or a sea that's like churning, lots of waves, lots of chaos. And then as you move to the right, there's going to be this very large valley scene that's going to be overshadowed by very dark clouds with lots of hail, stormy type kind of atmosphere and environment. You'll see my intention is that the valley will go way back into the drawing so that it'll look like you're looking like 1,000 miles into the land. So I'll try to use a lot of atmospheric perspective to create that. And then the very far right side will be another mountain side, but that'll be like exploding. So there'll be lots of rocks kind of being hurled out. And then at the very bottom, the whole point of this, there's going to be a couple of small, tiny figures silhouetted against a light background, just looking up at this whole scene. And what I'm trying to create there with these tiny figures is this sense of being overwhelmed by this world that is just in chaos and falling apart. But it's all contrasted by this scene up in the upper left-hand corner that I'm working on now, where you have this light, and the light beams are going to shine across and highlight these figures as a picture of hope in the midst of all this chaos. So that's goes back to our conversation about using reference and all of that. The reference is only there to serve the greater artistic vision of the drawing. And so I'm not here just to recreate a landscape. I'm telling a story. And so all of these elements that I'm using all contribute to that one single story of these tiny figures just being overwhelmed by the chaos of the world.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think, one of the things that we get asked a lot, or at least I do, is, a lot of people are like, I have these thoughts in my head. I have these visions in my head. How do I get them out? Right. And I think anybody that maybe was listening to you explain that is sitting there going, wow, what an amazing thing to have inside of your mind. But then how great is it to even be able to get that out? Right. Susanna, wow, that is a powerful piece of art. That's what we just got from Susanna. So I agree with you, Susanna, 100%. Wow, what an amazing, powerful piece of art. And I think one of the things that people go is, I just don't know how to get it out. I don't know how to get it out. I have them practice. Practice is what it takes, right? it's got to be something that you work on. It's just like anything. I have a lot of friends who are musicians, and some of them are gifted where they could just pick up a guitar and start playing right away, right? But most of them had to practice, right, Chad? Most of them had to work on, learning, scales and charts and finger placement and all that and strumming techniques. It's the same with art, right? It's a skill that you learn and you develop over time. But yeah, I agree, Suzanne. I love the fact that, there's a lot of meaning here and a lot of meaning there, but a lot of people can do that. You can achieve this too. Don't cut yourself short. Or if you're watching and you've thought that you wanted to draw or paint, take a class, join our live sessions, grab a sketchbook while you're watching. If you're watching and listening, pull out your sketchbook, set up a still life, grab something to draw, have fun with it, draw creation out of your mind. Or if you're Joe, Chad, he says, one of the tiny figures is going to be me. Chad already told me so. So Joe, maybe you should work on your portrait of you that's going to be placed in this piece, right? So that way you can be there. But I do think it's important. I think it's important to share these thoughts, and it's powerful. And don't sell yourself short, guys. Make sure that you guys give yourself a chance. The creative arts, the visual arts, the performing arts, the theater arts, the musical arts, they're so healthy for us to be involved in. And I think it should be part of your everyday life. You'll be surprised at what you can create. So, don't sell yourself short. Get out there and create with us. Join in with us. Be a part of this. Join this community. There's so much out there for everyone. And we're excited that you guys have joined us. So thank you for continuing to join us. If you have questions, please keep asking. We've got a lot of people that have jumped in. Thanks for jumping on, guys. This is Chad Nuss. This is Seth Jones. We're with the Visual Arts Academy and Studio. Chad's working on like a ginormous drawing. I think it's like 6 feet wide. 3.5 feet, 4 feet tall, and I'm working on a 30 by 40 inch canvas here in oil paints. But thank you guys again, and all the wonderful comments. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like we were talking the other day with some guests that came by the studio, and the illustration I always use is like when I worked at the Brown Hotel, I worked in the fine dining kitchen, and I had always worked in like corporate restaurants where they give you a recipe and you follow it to the T, whereas when you're in a fine dining restaurant, it's a little more free. You have to understand the principles of cooking, and the chefs were able to just take a few elements, a few ingredients, and put them together and create a dish. Well, the only way you can know how to do that is if you are working with those ingredients, and how they change flavor, what their profiles are, what the way they interact with other flavors. Well, the only way you can know that is if you practice recipes and you memorize certain combinations, and you just learn to know. It becomes second nature. But you've got to spend the time learning those recipes first before you can have the freedom to just kind of draw or create something. It's the same with drawing. You have to learn the fundamentals of how does shading work, how does tone work, how does light and dark work, what do textures look like, before you have the freedom to be able to do it without a reference. But that's not to say that you can't just go do it anyways. It doesn't have to look like a photograph. No one ever said that that's the mark of a good piece of artwork. So don't be afraid to try and draw a mountain, even if you've never drawn one before, and then take a photo reference and practice that too. Like there's definite benefits to both techniques.
Absolutely. I think, there was this story that I keep telling Patricia about, Chad, in our watercolor class, that a young lady started doing watercolors like 3 years ago with no formal education, and she's changing the perception of watercolor, right? And now, and it's funny because I was reading an article where she's like, but now I've gone back and learned some of these skills, and it's made me even better. Like she was just naturally, yes, she's one of those people that was just naturally gifted, naturally talented, right? Could do amazing works, having no training whatsoever. But yet now that she has received some insight and some technique and skills, she's gone even further beyond, right? And I think of it, Chad and I talk about, he talks about the food, which I'm always jealous because I can't cook for squat. But, sports was a big part of my life. And I think about athletes. There are athletes who are just naturally gifted with talent, right? They're a physical individual who has speed or skill. But when you get them in the right training program, or with the right dietitian, or with the right coach, or the right mentors, or right teammates, they become even better, right? So yes, you can have natural talent, natural ability, but learning these skills, it just takes you to that extra level. And I think it goes back to something we talked about very early on, which is these techniques, you own them, right? They become part of you. And sometimes what comes out of those techniques isn't what the technique was meant to be, but it still turns out to be very useful. And I think that's a power in learning and training under masters and mentors and teachers, or even just friends and colleagues. That helps a lot too, is just to be around other creative individuals.
Yeah, that's how a lot of movements started, or different types of art has started, was just like the example that you gave of someone who didn't know what they were doing and they just started experimenting, or someone that was a master at that particular medium but just tried it in a different way, and then all of a sudden a whole new vista of art opened up. And so that's where, it's, don't ever be afraid to try a different thing. Try an oil painting, try an acrylic painting, try watercolor. And even if you don't do it exactly the way that the masters say you should do it, try new ways. And then, there is something to be said about learning it the established way as well. But it only, as Seth said, it only makes you better. The more that you can learn, the different ways that you can learn something just expands your ability to communicate. So it's all beneficial in the end, no matter which approach you take, I think.
I was sharing just the other day with one of our students. She's an amazing athlete, and she was kind of complaining a little bit about some of the training things that her coach was having her do. And I thought it was interesting because, being a coach myself and an athlete, right, Chad, I'm like, oh, I agree with you. Absolutely. Those coaches, they don't know what the heck they're talking about, right? Like, this is probably a stupid drill. But then as a coach's perspective, sometimes you don't know why those drills or those skills are going to help you, right? You can't see the forest through the trees, so to speak. And I think as an artist, sometimes that's true as well. Sometimes you don't know when something, like stippling, it's probably been 15, 20 years. And yet all of a sudden that resurfaced, and it's going to help make my painting significantly better because I needed that texture to separate the texture between the pants and the floor and the couch and everything else. Yeah. And I would tell you to soak it all in. Chad loves to read. I love to read. We try to consume a lot because then we can regurgitate that back out. And so I think, consume a lot, read a lot, learn a lot. Don't be afraid. As Chad says, I'm amazed every time he comes in the studio. He's got this energy because he's sitting there going, oh, I read this, or you should see this, or I watched this video, or I did that. And it's exhilarating and intoxicating because when you have that passion, you have that energy, it makes me want to be better. So surround yourself with people that want you to be better. Surround yourself with people that are going to help you improve as an artist, whether it's just encouragement, skills, teaching, whatever. That's how, to your point, Chad, I loved it that you brought up the movements. Everybody in the art world doesn't know what the future of the movements are. Well, what I think is funny about that, Chad, is I don't think anybody knew what those movements were going to be when they happened. Yep. It's all in retrospect, right? You don't know what's going to happen. Everybody goes, well, everything's been done. No. Everything's been done that we know of today.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know what tomorrow holds. And I think that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I remember when I was in grade school and, you take an art class or whatever, and they'd have you do some like blind contour drawing. I never used to understand why. And if you don't know what blind contour drawing is, it's basically you take your pencil and you're looking at an object, let's say a still life or a portrait, and you draw it, but you're not allowed to look at your hand drawing or the pencil drawing, and you're not allowed to lift your pencil off the paper. So you're looking at this thing, you're drawing it, and you can't see what you're doing, and it feels so pointless. And when you look at it, it looks like a Picasso, like the eyes over here and the nose over here, and things are all out of whack. And when I was
just call it like it is, Chad. It sucks. It sucks to do it. It's not fun. It's a challenge.
Yes, and even having been an artist for many years, there's still a part of me is like, I don't understand why we do that. However, there are a lot of those kind of assignments that now I turn around and tell my students to do because I understand why you should do something like that. The point of a blind contour drawing is to get your mind off, to break your mind from thinking it has to look exactly like what I'm seeing. You have to break your mind, the way your eye sees things. There's certain exercises that you need to do so that, and this is what I tell my students, you have to get to a point where when you're looking at a portrait or you're looking at a still life, you no longer see the still life. It's not a coffee cup. It's now a collection of tones, a collection of shapes, a collection of forms. And when you put those together in an appropriate way, it becomes a coffee cup. And so sometimes it's hard to do that. You have to do certain exercises to break your kind of, the way I say is break your brain or break your mind from its natural way of doing things. And so it's just like you said, those old techniques, you may wonder why learn that? Like, we have photographs now. Why do I have to learn how to draw realistically, or why do I have to do this or that or whatever? But just realize that, someone a lot smarter and more experienced than you is designed that because it helped them, and it would, serve you to have the humility to try it. And you might not like it, you might not understand it, but just know that a lot of times part of being an artist is taking something that you don't understand and you don't like and using it to your advantage. So
I agree. We have an amazing comment by Joe, who's just throwing out hot ones left and right. I think, top fan award goes to Joe for his comments alone. He's absolutely brilliant. Joe, I don't want to say anything because I know that sometimes you're supposed to be doing dishes and you have us on while you're watching. So I don't want to say anything out loud because, it's kind of a secret. Your comment's kind of a secret. But I will say this. I'm glad to see that this has motivated you to get out of your comfort zone. That is exactly part of the reason Chad and I are doing these, is to build this community and get people in the creative arts. And I love that you're going to get out of your comfort zone. I happen to know you. I think you're just a wonderful human being. And I think this is outside of your comfort zone, but it's going to be great. Our schedules are posted typically about a month out. Our January schedule, we have some explorations that are posted out for January now. Most of what we have for January is our 8-week courses and our 4-week intro to art courses. Those 4-week intro to art courses expose you to a week of a day, a session of drawing, a session of acrylic, a session of oil painting. If you're an adult, it's a session of watercolor. If you're a young artist, 17 and under, you get a day of cartooning and comics. Most of our schedule currently on January is those 8-week courses and the 4-week courses. And then we fill in with those 2-hour exploration sessions. But those 2-hour exploration sessions, if you see one of our most recent posts, I encourage you to see the artwork. We just had an artist come in the studio about an hour ago, Chad, and his comment, and I'm not going to get it exactly, but I wanted to quote this, right, Chad? He literally goes, I can't tell who the master was and who the participant was because all of these look so good.
Yeah.
And half of those people that he was referencing have never painted before. And even half of those people have never picked up a paintbrush. And so I'm so excited, Joe, by your eagerness, your excitement to get out of your comfort zone. I don't want to say too much because you're probably doing the dishes and I don't want to get in trouble. But I'm really, really glad that that's something that you're going to participate in and experience because it's absolutely wonderful. Sarah, thank you so much. I know you love the exploration sessions. You're an amazing musician, and to see you cross over into the visual arts is spectacular. So I'm really happy to see that you enjoyed those exploration sessions. I hope you had fun with those, and I hope to see you again when we do some more of those. But thank you guys. Everybody that's joined, thank you all so much. I hope you guys are having as much fun as Chad and I are. If you can't tell, we are. And it's wonderful. Thank you guys for everything. Joe, I'll reach out to you and give you some dates on those available courses. Chad, you were talking about some of the things that you do that you don't realize is going to come back. I created some characters called the Eppies many, many years ago. And they live in trees, and I drew wood over and over and over and over and over, like plain wood, spun wood, organic. And it's funny because I'm looking at this painting that I'm working on, and it's all flooding back. It's like, oh yeah, this is how wood grain looks. This is how you work in these shades. This is how you create all this and that texture. And I think, don't you think it is? It's amazing how something that you worked on and repeatedly did, it's like riding a bike. It just comes right back to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's a crazy thing about how the brain works. You tuck something back in the back of your head thinking, oh, I'll never use that again. Or that particular technique, like stipling or whatever, drives you crazy or whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like exactly like riding a bike. It becomes a part of you. And it's just another tool that you can use. It gives you flexibility and enables you to do even more things. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, and you don't even know when it's going to come back, right? Like, you and I have worked on a lot of different projects over the years, a lot of different things. And we've been very fortunate, very blessed to be able to do a lot of different things, right? I mean, a lot of different subject matter, a lot of different stuff. And I think it's absolutely amazing that all of a sudden these things come back to you. And they usually come back to you when you need them most, right? I've been terrified of this painting. I've been terrified because it's of my daughter and I don't want to mess it up. And she even came in today and she looked at it and she goes, oh, I love it.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, which is amazing. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail miserably with this painting, you know? And as I went back to the carpet, right, which I did earlier today, Chad, it flooded right back. And all of a sudden it gave me this sense of relief, right? It gave me this immediate sense of relief because it's like, I do know how to do this. I've done this before. I've done this technique millions of times. Well, not millions of times, but lots of times. And it does. It just comes back and it feels good. You know, it feels good to be able to have that skill and to be able to regurgitate it and utilize it again. We've got Susanna, I just do it. I can't draw it all. And Seth called me out to draw during a class. Oh, I got to show this one. Okay, hold on. I'm going to put this one on the screen, guys. This one makes me so happy. Susanna, if you guys can read that, but this is a great experience. You were just hanging out and we threw you in the class and your daughter is very, very talented. I think you held your own, Susanna. I think you held your own. You did really, really great. I think you surprised yourself. You surprised me for sure because I didn't know what to expect. But I also think you surprised your daughter as well. And this is the even better comment, everybody. This is the better one. I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this, Susanna. You left feeling like an artist. That's because you were. For an hour and a half, you were an artist. You weren't practicing. I mean, you were practicing, but you were an artist for an hour and a half. And I'm so glad you left feeling that way because that's exactly how you should leave. You should leave feeling great about it. And boy, if that doesn't give me, Chad, the amount of joy that you and I talk about all the time from instructing and leading these sessions, I don't know what else will. So Susanna, thank you for sharing that. It's a little comical, but thank you for sharing that. And I'm so glad that you had that experience.
Yeah, that is a great comment. I was actually thinking about that today. You know, I'll run across something on social media or something, or I'll watch a documentary or I'll read something. And, you know, just recently I found the story of this guy in France. He's like in his 80s or whatever, and he's a painter, and he would go around and he would paint pictures of the city. And he bought a studio where it was like a storefront, and so he would go and he would paint, and then he would sell his pictures, just a small little store. And here's someone like, you know, granted it's in France, which is like a huge like art capital of the world, but he's relatively unknown, you know, just painting pictures of the city, selling what he can, and just living his solitary life. And there was just something very touching about that. And I felt like almost like a brotherhood with him. I was like, yes, we're artists. Like, I love that feeling of knowing here's someone that doesn't care about fame, doesn't care about the money, just wants to paint because he loves painting. And I felt like a kinship with this person. And so when you made that comment, I left feeling like an artist. Like, that is the greatest feeling in the world, I think. You know, even when I look at like famous painters' biographies and I'll read about their life, so many of them during their lifetime didn't see success or fame or anything like that. They just felt the struggle of being an artist and just painting for the sake of the beauty they see around them. And I feel that as well. Like I look at the art world as it is today, and it's this huge world that tends to be very difficult to understand or be a part of because a lot of it can be rather presumptuous. You know, you'll see like people gather around a canvas with like one pencil mark on it and everyone will rave about it. And you're just like, I don't get that. I don't understand. I can't connect with that.
Yep.
But then you'll see this, you know, biography of this old single man in the middle of the city painting his city because he loved it. And that's the kind of kinship that you have as an artist that I just love.
Well, and Chad, I'll go a little bit further with that too. One of the greatest joys that we get here at the Academy is when young artists come in and you can see it as soon as they walk in and they see the easels, they see the drafting tables, because you and I experienced this as kids too. And we've got to get Thomas on here as well, our other co-founder, our artist, another instructor and artist of ours. We got to get him on here for a session also because he can talk very thoroughly about this experience because he taught a lot of young kids for many, many years. But isn't it the greatest feeling when you see these young artists come in and they feel like they found a home? They have a place where there's other people that have energy like them, that have creativity like them, that, you know, they may be a little bit unique in the way that they perceive the world. And it's just the most wonderful feeling when they come in and they can sense that this is a place where I can learn and I can grow and I can develop and I can create, because to your point, it's just that ability to create. It's that energy of creating and putting things out there. It's absolutely amazing. And I think that's one of the greatest joys that we get, especially with everyone, right, Chad? With every artist, any age. We have artists that come in here that are 90 plus, and they teach me a lot every single session, guys. Let me tell you, they have more years of painting and drawing than I've been alive, and it's brilliant. But when those young artists come in, my heart explodes, because you get to see the pure joy that they get to experience.
Yeah, well, I just think of my daughter, for example. Just last night, we were at a kind of like a get together for her work, where she works, and it was people of all different ages, and we just found ourselves just kind of sitting, her and I, together talking. And I told her, I was like, I'm a very introverted person. I don't like a lot of small talk. I'm the kind of person, you come over and talk to me, I'm like, hey, let's talk about, like, this artist or this painter or this philosophy or something like that. That most people, it's a little too much for them, especially in that environment.
Yep.
She's that kind of person too. And so she loves coming here because she feels a connection to a bigger community of other artists. And to see her joy of being here and knowing that, hey, these are my people. This is a place I can go. I don't have to feel superficial or fake or try to put on a show or whatever. I can be myself around these other people. It's just amazing. And so we've seen other young people that have that same enthusiasm for art and that same feeling about life in general, and to connect with other artists is just incredible to watch. Yeah.
Well, and everyone's different, right? Everyone's unique in it. And for me, I was an artist athlete. And so I didn't know where did you fit in, right? You were this kind of jock person that loved sports and sweaty and all this, but then you just wanted to go and paint and watch. Back in the day, we didn't get a lot of anime and manga, and comics weren't as popular as they are now. And and you and I both have degrees in comic books and sequential art, right? And illustration. And it's not as cool. It's a lot more cool now than it was way back when.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But the one thing I think is powerful, and Chad, I think you would agree with me, and I know that Thomas does. Art is for everyone. Art is for everyone. And the beauty is we live in such a connected world that there's so much art that if you love something, there are other people that will love it too.
Yep.
And that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thomas has a saying, our co-founder, Thomas, some of you have met, and hopefully we'll get him on here. He has a saying that you don't have to create in a vacuum anymore. You don't have to truly be isolated. The gentleman that's painting his city, he can go out and paint and be surrounded by other artists, but he can also be communicated with in ways that he never dreamt of 100 years ago, right? And I think that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. Chad, Joe has a statement here. I'm going to read it out. He goes, not going to lie, we came to the open house, and I said, yeah, well, we will sign up. And then I saw all these amazing drawings, and I said, yeah, no way. And he chickened out. But because he's been watching the live videos now, he's like, now I want to give it a try. I want to give it a go. And that's what this is about, right, Chad? Getting out there, exposing people to the arts, and giving them the chance to either experience it with us while they're at home drawing, or even getting here into the studio and painting with us. So Joe, I'm super glad that you're going to give it a shot. I think you're going to love it, brother. I think you're going to love it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it is kind of a catch-22. Like on one side, like if you come into a place like this, it can feel a bit intimidating because you see Seth's paintings on the wall, you see my drawings, those kind of things. And we've been doing this for 20, 30 years. So we're going to be at a certain level. Whereas if someone walks in, they haven't drawn a whole lot or never drawn at all, it seems like overwhelming. Like there's no way I could do anything like that. But you have to understand that there's not an expectation to be at that level at that point. And so but at the same time, we want to show that our instructors are qualified and are gifted to be able to teach. And so you have that kind of loose balance, but we also want to be a place where whatever skill level you're welcome here. So if you've never drawn before, I am more than happy to teach you, how does a pencil work? How does an eraser work? What are the different kinds of pencils? What are the different kinds of erasers? How does a blending stump work? What are tones like? What are marks like? Like when we do drawing 101, for example, we start at the very basic. How do you do a hatch? What does that mean? How do you do cross hatching? How do you do different tones? That's where we start, and then we build from there. And everyone has to start somewhere. And it would be different if you walked in here and Seth and I didn't know how to paint, didn't know how to draw, and then we're trying to teach you how to do that. It'd be like the blind teaching the blind at that point. You could just get a YouTube video. But what we really value is the community, the in-person instruction, where we're able to see where you're at and help you and encourage you along the way to get better than you are now when you first walk in here.
Well, and I think it's one of those things. What I've really enjoyed is a lot of people that have communicated to you and I both that, I used to draw, I used to paint, or I dabbled in this, I dabbled in that, but life gets in the way. My career, my family, other life adventures, positive things. It's not always bad. Everybody always thinks that, it's the bad stuff in life that kept me from being creative or an artist. That's not always true. A lot of times it's wonderful things, right? It's amazing things that kind of keep you from that. But I love that people have come back to it and they said, you know what, this is a part of who I am. This is part of my life. I want to get involved. I want to do it again. I want to learn some new techniques, or I just want to be a part of that community Chad just talked about, right? I just want to be around other creative individuals and have some really positive experience. Heck, guys, we even teach you how to hold a pencil. If you don't even know how to hold a pencil, we'll show you different ways, because there are many different ways. If you watch how Chad's holding his pencil right now, I'm going to zoom in on that, or I'm going to make that go full screen, Chad, because I think it's interesting. A lot of people, see a way to hold a pencil and they hold it like they're writing, right? They're doing lettering, like they're writing their name or they're writing cursive, but you're kind of holding yours slightly different.
Yeah, I'm holding it almost like someone that's directing, like a baton or whatever. It gives you a lot of freedom and fluidity, or like a lot of looseness with your drawing. Because I want the drawings, even though they look very tight and detailed, I want to approach it with a lot of just flexibility, because I'm not going in here and like starting right here and with each mark, I want it to be perfect. I'm trying to get a feel for it. I'm trying to get some texture in there, and you need looseness to do that. A conducting baton. You're right. Yes, Sarah. Thank you. That's exactly what you're doing. And if you want to, you could, really extend the metaphor to say you are orchestrating a picture here. You're putting marks down in a particular way. You're moving it around. You're lightening some up. You're darkening some other areas up. But the best way to do it is by holding your pencil very loosely towards the end of the actual pencil, instead of traditionally we hold it like this to write. And whenever you start drawing like that, your drawings are going to be very tight, just like as you're writing. But when you kind of hold it, down towards the end, it gives just the flexibility and a looseness that just brings an added life to your drawing, for sure.
Chad, I absolutely love what you stated, and we need to make it a quote and put it on a T-shirt, I think, which is, I am conducting this piece of art, right? And because, we think of that, and it's funny that Sarah knew that because she's a musician and has been her entire life. So she gets that metaphor right away, right, Chad? It's like oh my gosh, it just clicks. All of a sudden it just clicks. Yes, that's why. That's why I'm holding the paintbrush from a distance. That's why I'm holding the pencil the way I am. But I think we need to make sure that that's quoted as a Chad Nuss quote there. That was beautiful, my friend. That was absolutely perfect.
Hey, I'm gonna zoom in on one little area here, because I wanna talk just briefly, and let's see if I can do it without knocking over the camera.
Yep. Once you get there, Chad, I'll take it full screen, brother, so that way you can really have the floor with it. Once I see you get set, I'll shift it over.
Let's see here. Okay.
And for everybody joining, thank you guys again. I just kind of do it periodically. We are relatively new. We've only been going live for about a week or so. So if you like what you're watching, please subscribe, like, share, give us a comment. We really appreciate all the feedback. Again, this is an extension of our in-person academy. A lot of what we're doing, we try to build out locally. If you are local, please come by and see these drawings in person, see these paintings in person, take a tour of the facility, see the gallery upstairs, look into some of our classes and our courses. We thank you guys so very much for every comment, every like, share. All the support we have is absolutely beautiful. And it looks like Chad's getting pretty close here, so I'm going to take it full screen for him. Bear with me 1 second, guys, and I'll get that over there for you guys. Here you go, Chad.
Okay, so we talked about before, the way you hold your pencil is being very loose and towards the end of the pencil. Then we talked about happy accidents, or just kind of using variety in your drawing. And this is an exact kind of example that I'm talking about. So if you notice these highlighted lines in here, I didn't really intend for those to be here, but I'm using it to my advantage because I want to show this mountain disintegrating. You can't really see it with the light, but below that, I do have some kind of lines indicating where this will turn into individual rocks and that kind of thing. But I didn't intend for this. All I did was I was just going along, just making my marks, and there's some random marks here, and then all of a sudden you have a very dark shade with a lighter tone, and then you just go in and work that area, and it's kind of it's like the opposite of drawing a line. You're using tone to create a line or create a ridge in this mountain. So it's not so much about going in and making sure like every little mark, is placed exactly where it needs to be. You just use random stray marks to your advantage, and then you'll go in with your blending stump and you'll just kind of move it around and get it to where you want it to be. And that's just kind of how it works. So this still looks very messy, but I will use that to my advantage to make that look like a cliff that is falling apart. So it still needs some work, but I just wanted to highlight that little technical detail.
Well, and I'm so glad you do, because you can't really see it. And I would encourage you to come and see it in person, because sometimes what you think is loose, sometimes what you think is just general random mark making, right, Chad? It's not. It has a purpose. There's a reason behind doing it. And when you step back, or when you see it in relationship to the other parts of the drawing or the painting, right, Chad, then it speaks and then it works. And so you may look at a piece of, like some of the old masters, some of their brush strokes on the flesh. You're sitting there going, why is that green there? That green looks so out of place. And then you step back and you go, oh my gosh, it's the rising of a vein sticking out through underneath the skin.
Exactly.
And you sit there and go, oh wow, and so those are the beautiful things that can kind of happen from what you just illustrated.
Yep, exactly. And when you look at a mountain up close, there is a lot of randomness to it. Like, it's ordered randomness, because otherwise it wouldn't look like a mountain. But the approach is not to get so hung up on where every little bit of shade is, or where every ledge is, and where every little detail is. You make your own details up as they go, and then you go back and reference a mountain, see if it looks like that. If not, you tighten up some areas, maybe loosen up some other areas. So yeah, it's just a continual process, putting on, taking away, moving around, and eventually you get there. So.
And guys, we're going to draw here just for a little bit longer, but thanks for joining us. Let us know if you guys like the 2-person setup. It's a little interesting, Chad. It's a little different than doing it on your own.
Yeah,
I personally love it. I really like it. And so, guys, if you're still on this, let us know what you think. Let us know if you like having the 2 live cameras, switching it back up a little bit. I know that Chad and I have enjoyed this thoroughly. Maybe, Chad, what do you think? Another 5-10 minutes, and we'll call it quits. But I think we should do another one this week. So let us know in the comments. Let us know if you like the 2-person setup with Chad and I both doing it at the same time. And let us know if you want us to go live again this week, because I think he and I kind of do. So I think we're probably going to do it again.
I would love to. Yeah, I definitely love it. It gives a lot of interesting conversation back and forth, and love to ask each other questions and then take questions and comments from people that are watching along. So it's awesome.
Let's see. I'm going to put this one up here for you.
She likes the sound of that orange pencil. When I first saw the live, I was a little nervous about that, because the sound of the graphite on the paper for some people could sound like almost like scratching a blackboard or whatever. So I was a bit nervous about that, but I'm glad it's not having that effect. So I'm glad your daughter likes it, because I was really nervous that would turn some people away. So.
Well, I'm such a big, in Chad, I know you've heard some of my classes and my sessions, but Sarah, you can speak to this. I talk a lot about the sound that brushes make on the canvas, the whoosh, 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 and it's because you can hear, and this with graphite and charcoal as well, the way that you use it and the marks that you're making do have a certain sound to it. And so sometimes when I'm using a brush, you can actually tell if you're making the correct mark, or if the fluidity of the paint is correct, by the sound that it's making. I think there's absolutely an audible portion to art making, right? It's not just visual. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of physical texture. There's a lot of sound that goes into it, and I think it's brilliant.
Oh yeah, I have some really cheap graphite pencils, and you can tell they're cheap because they have little portions of the graphite that get real rough, and it's like scraping against the paper. Whereas a nice graphite pencil will go on just really smooth and really nice. It'll still sound scratchy, but it'll be a lot smoother.
Well, it's that grain, right? It's like those chunks that you get, and you can hear it, and it's like, oh, it's not even that. You almost hurt because you're feeling like you're hurting your paper.
Yeah,
I'm ruining the page right now. It's like, oh.
It's like
Joe says he likes the 2-person. He says we got to do the 2-person for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like with those cheaper pencils, it's almost like you're etching your drawing into the paper rather than drawing onto the paper. So,
which again, I'm sure there are people that have done some brilliant things with that, right? Like, it wasn't too long ago I started seeing people that are color pencil artists, Chad, that will go in and they'll kind of emboss the paper to get very specific textures, and to get that layering technique and to get the color pencil in there. And I'm sitting there going, I could never ruin my page that way. I've started playing around with it, and it's a pretty cool technique. You can get some really good stuff with it.
Yeah.
It's surprising. I do want to go back. I missed it a while back. But Patricia, thank you for the kind words. Thank you. She had mentioned that my enthusiasm was exciting and partially what she enjoys. Thank you so much. But I got to be honest, I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. This is what we get to do. And so I should have that level of enthusiasm because this is absolutely wonderful. Getting to work alongside Chad and Thomas, Zach and Michelle and Caitlin, getting to be a part of this community, see these young artists come in here and get to be a part of it. It is the absolute most wonderful thing. And we're so fortunate, we're so blessed, we're so lucky that if I didn't have that enthusiasm, Chad, and I know you have it as well, Thomas has it also, I think maybe we should do something else then. Don't you think, bud? Maybe we should go and find something else to do because this is pretty amazing. This is a wonderful feeling. It's a wonderful adventure that we get to be a part of. And I'm so glad so many of you are joining on this adventure with us.
Oh, yeah, it is amazing. Well, some of that enthusiasm is your personality, though, because we often joke that, like, I am, and I can even hear it in my own voice. I'm typically very monotone, very quiet, very calm. And I appreciate the compliment of the excitement that you see in the midst of that. But like, I very rarely will like jump up and down and all that. Even if someone shows me their artwork, like I probably offend people because I just look at them like, oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. Whereas when Seth sees it, he's like, oh man, that's so amazing. And I don't have the energy to do that. But I am very excited about drawing and I'm very excited about teaching. And I love seeing my students grow and become, amazing artists in their own way. So I often make the joke that when students take my class, I kind of lull them to sleep a little bit, and then Seth comes in and wakes them up really fast.
Which is pretty common with all of my former teaching and coaching. Sarah, thank you so much for joining. So glad you guys were able to watch. You guys have a wonderful night. I look forward to the family session that you guys have coming up. Thank you for all the support. You've been absolutely wonderful. I really, really appreciate all the support that you guys have. Caitlin, thanks for jumping in. Love you, honey. And I do want to give a shout out. All this energy Chad's talking about. I hope Noah's watching somewhere, or maybe he'll watch later. Seeds, Noah. The energy and the passion about seeds, my friend. Yes. If you can get passionate about seeds, you can get passionate about anything. So that's absolutely wonderful. And Chad, I think the energy is contagious when you have a good group of people together.
Yeah.
And I think, even if you're not as outgoing, even if we have some artists that are kind of very introverted, and that's okay. I'm very outwardly, and I think it's great. But when you're surrounded by like-minded individuals, passionate individuals, you can be quiet, you can be loud, you can be all these different ways, and it still feels like a wonderful experience. And that's the culture and that's the community that we're so fortunate to have here and so grateful to have.
Yeah, you need someone like me to appeal to those extra quiet students so they feel they feel at home and they know that they can be quiet too, for sure. So I'll take that.
Absolutely. Well, guys, we're gonna keep drawing for maybe 1 or 2 more minutes here. Let us know if you have any last minute questions, anything like that. I don't know if you saw Joe's comment. I think hopefully, Chad, we're still learning a little bit. Can you see the comments?
Yep, I saw it. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm sure the more I do this, the more animated and open up I will be. So look forward to sharing that with you in the future lives.
As we go on with this, guys, we will start to develop a schedule of when we're going to go live. Right now, it's just kind of periodically and randomly when we don't have classes and sessions going on. We are starting our next round of 8-week sessions in January, the second week of January. We have some 4-week intro art classes as well as 2-hour explorations. But the goal, I think, for Chad and I is to find days of the week when we don't have scheduled courses, and we'll post a schedule of when we're going to go live. That way you guys can join in, and it's not so random at times. But we're growing with this. We're learning with this. We've, obviously we went from one person with 1 camera up to 2 people with 4 cameras. So we're growing with this and having a great time. Any last minute questions or thoughts or anything like that, please go ahead and let us know. But I will go ahead and say thank you to everybody for joining us tonight and bearing with us. We got started a little bit late. I had some technical difficulties here and we were able to work through them. So really appreciate you guys bearing with us. We were meant to go live at 6:30, got a little late start, but thanks for being with us. Any last minute questions or thoughts, let us know. Or Chad, any last minute thoughts that you have? Love to hear them.
No, I enjoy the conversation with you. I'm so thankful, like you said, for all the people that stopped by and saw, we can see the eyes and how many people are watching. So it's just awesome to see how big that number got. And it's just incredible to see it continue to be successful and grow. And I'm looking forward to the future for sure.
Well, guys, that's going to wrap it up for us tonight with the Visual Arts Academy, doing some live drawing and some live painting. I think we're probably going to go live pretty soon again. We'll let you know. We'll make a post and let everybody know when we're going to go out. But if you haven't seen the amount of work that Chad's been doing and what I've been working on, please come by and see us in person. Again, we're in historic Middletown, the Visual Arts Academy and Studio here in Louisville, Kentucky. But we're global, just like most artists nowadays. We'd love to connect with you, like, subscribe, share, comment, engage with us. We'll answer as many questions as we can. As Joe says, thanks for letting him heckle. We love it, Joe. We love the person. You can see your personality coming through your comments, and it's absolutely amazing. Thank you for being awesome yourself. We cannot wait to have you join us again, and we're excited to see you get in here and create yourself. So, guys, with that, Chad, any last-minute comments or anything like that? But for me, thank you guys so much for all the support, and we will see you soon. Chad?
Yeah, we thank you all very much. You guys have a great night. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you, everybody.